I see even Cyril
Yeah,
Grayson,
John,
your buddy
here's what you're doing.
got hurt.
This disservice to the Buccaneers. They still have Mike Evans. Mike Evans is one of the best receivers.
And he
in the
almost
National
got
Football
hurt,
League.
by the way.
Yesterday, he got his 8th consecutive 1,000-yard season. First ever player in the National Football League to go for 1,000 in his first 8 years in his career. He's playing. He's going to be in the game against the Eagles on Sunday. Chris Godwin isn't. So what? They throw it to Mike Evans. So what? They throw it to Rob Gronkowski, maybe the greatest tight end in the history of the National Football League. You're kind of focusing in on the players that the Bucs may or may not be without. Why are you not looking at the players that the Bucs have that carried them to a Super Bowl victory last year? Postseason is right in the NFL, and the Eagles are in the mix. It's going to be a uphill task, but at least they're in the dance. So we got you here for the next 2 hours to talk about it. John McMullen, Jody McDonald, a.k.a. your Mac and Mac Birds 365 guys. Yes, since this is the first chance as a partnership, we've had a chance to talk about what happened at the Link on Saturday night. We will do so, but we will not talk about it.
Do we have to?
Yeah, we have to. We will not talk about it for the next 2 hours because, yes, both John and I might want to kill ourselves if that were the case, but we need to give it its due justice and talk about it for at least a little bit here in hour number 1. But then it is turn the page and on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You got what you asked for, Eagles fans. You wanted Tampa, you got Tampa.
Well, I don't think you should blame all Eagles fans because a bunch of writers, reporters said I don't know who Eagles fans wanted. You would probably know better than me, Joe.
Yes.
They want Tampa Bay from your sentiment.
Last week, both here on Birds 365, on the shows I did on WIP, listening to WIP, and checking my own Twitter. Yes, Philadelphia, would you prefer me to say that? Philadelphia wanted Tampa Bay over Dallas. That was their main thing. Some were smart enough like you to back up and say, well, I'd rather have the Cardinals than anybody else, which, of course, is the smart thing to say. But when it came to a specific comparison of who would you rather play, Tampa or Dallas, many more, a heavy majority said Dallas instead of Tampa, which I said too many times last week and will say too many times this week as well, I think is nuts. But that was the sentiment of this town, both media and fans, that they would have preferred to play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Dallas Cowboys. Well, you got what you asked for. The Tampa Bay Bucs on the schedule.
You know, the Eagles, remember, the Eagles are the 7th seed now. They could have been the 6th seed if Atlanta won. So, you know, it's not the jockeying back and forth and that kind of thing is not important. But the realization that, look, in the first round of the playoffs, you were going to be up against it no matter who you were facing. You were going to be a significant underdog no matter who you were facing. So you're trying to choose the lesser of, in that case, 2 evils, but really in 4 evils. I've said pretty consistently, look, I think NFL games are about styles and matchups, and I just don't think they match up right now with the Dallas Cowboys all that well. Doesn't mean they match up well with Tampa Bay. It means they match up a little bit better from my perspective.
You're still clinging to that, huh?
Yeah. I mean, well, I just don't think they match up with Dallas at all, period. End of sentence. I mean, I don't know how they can deal with that team. You saw the wide receivers, and they didn't even have Michael Gallup. And I got into it on Twitter with one fan who's telling me Quez Watkins is better than Cedric Wilson. Look, I can't help you if you think that. I mean, that kid can play. The only reason he's not on the field is because the guys in front of him are Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup typically. I mean, he would be a number 2 receiver on most teams in the NFL. Quez Watkins is the number 2 receiver out of complete necessity, because the Eagles don't have anybody else, and we'll talk about the receivers. And J.J. Arcega-Whiteside taking the heat up Jalen Reagor, at least for a week. Yeah, Jalen Reagor's happy with that one. But Look, I just think that team is tremendously, tremendously talented, and as is Tampa Bay, but Tampa Bay is not as healthy as Dallas. So, if you came to me and said, all right, Leonard Fournette's ready to go, Chris Godwin's ready to go, Antonio Brown didn't have his latest kerfuffle, I might have a different conversation, but that's not where we are. So, it's not, the old adage is true. It's not who you play, it's when you play them. And I just, think Tampa Bay is a little bit more banged up. So again, if you're telling me lesser of two evils between those two particular teams, I'm going to go Tampa, but I'd rather have the Rams. You saw the Rams fall apart. That was an embarrassment, the way they lost that game. And Arizona, and they're going to play each other. I'd rather face both of those teams. And maybe I shifted a little bit there, but the Rams they're not mentally tough enough.
And Matthew Stafford now steps in. This was a playoff-like game that the Rams were in yesterday, and you saw what happened. Now the actual playoffs start, where Matthew Stafford has accomplished exactly nothing in his playoff career. So I'm in agreement with you on the Rams. But somehow the beaten and battered Bucs were able to put up a 41 spot in the game that they needed against Carolina yesterday to secure the second spot in the NFC playoffs. Somehow they seem to rise above the ashes that they are with their injuries. And yes, the same.
Well, they're the Super Bowl champions. I mean, I'm not. They have the greatest quarterback of all time, and I do keep waiting for Father Time to finally, stop hitting snooze on his particular alarm clock when it comes to Tom Brady. I don't know when it's going to happen. Nobody's saying they're a bad team. Again, there is no Chris Godwin. That's his third down guy. That's his security blanket on third down. Out for the season, obviously with a torn ACL. Now, I have seen, and we'll try to get a Tampa guy on, and we'll check things out this week, that Leonard Fournette, playoff Lenny, as they call him down there, is close to returning. We'll see if they try to get him back for the playoffs. I think that's a big key because, Ronald Jones, you mentioned Le'Veon Bell last week. I'm not scared of Le'Veon Bell at this point. I mean, our old friend Kenyon Barner's on that team at this point. So, I mean, even though I always said Leonard Fournette didn't live up to the expectations he had coming out of the draft, he's turned into a very good player in Tampa Bay, which is funny how that works with Tom Brady. But, I mean, and then we talk about receivers, now it's Tyler Johnson and I see even Cyril Grayson. Your buddy got hurt.
This difference to the Buccaneers. They still have Mike Evans. Mike Evans is one of the best receivers.
And he almost got hurt.
Yesterday, he got his 8th consecutive 1,000-yard season. First ever player in the National Football League to go for 1,000 in his first 8 years in his career. He's playing. He's going to be in the game against the Eagles on Sunday. Chris Godwin isn't. So what? They throw it to Mike Evans. So what? They throw it to Rob Gronkowski, maybe the greatest tight end in the history of the National Football League. You're kind of focusing in on the players that the Bucs may or may not be without. Why are you not looking at the players that the Bucs have that carried them to a Super Bowl victory last year?
Because the Eagles have a really good corner. And in theory, they could at least slow down a really good receiver if they want to. And Darius Slay has played at an all-pro level. Now, the problem is when you have to complement, excuse me, as Dallas has the complements, then it becomes much more difficult because then you need a big game from Steve Nelson. Then you need a big game from Avonte Maddox, and not that they're not capable. Especially Avonte has played at a very high level as a slot corner. Steve Nelson's been competent, I always say, as a cornerback too. It just makes it more difficult. And when you have a quarterback like Tom, remember, Tom Brady is using everybody. I mean, that's his game. His game isn't what the Eagles do, where it's Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert and everybody else gets, they're the big dogs at the bowl and everybody else gets the scraps. The whole mentality of Tom Brady is move the ball around, put the football to everybody, get everybody involved. And, they have Rob Gronkowski, they have Cameron Great. They're still a good team. I'm not saying they're a great team. They're the reigning Super Bowl champions. I'm not saying they're not a good team. I just think, and it's the old boxing analogy, and I use it all the time, styles make fights. And, there are certain teams, there might be a better boxer, but you might match up better against what he does well than a worse boxer who knocks you out in the second round because you can't handle the left hook or whatever, and they got a powerful left hook. I just don't think the Eagles match up with the Dallas Cowboys right now.
So you think the Cowboys should be able to easily dispense with the 49ers next week, or do you not like that matchup for Dallas?
I certainly think Dallas should beat San Francisco. I mean, I haven't sat and studied it to see if San Francisco matches up better, but you know how I feel about Jimmy Garoppolo. I think they should have started Trey Lance, and they probably win that game going away, San Francisco yesterday. So I don't know. I'm not, but that's the thing, Jody. I'm not saying they match up with everybody the same way. That I don't agree with that. Like, I think certain teams match up with other teams better, and it doesn't mean that everybody else in the league matches up the same exact way.
I understand that. That's why I'm asking you about how you think the Cowboys match up with the 49ers.
I think they're a better team. I think Deebo Samuel makes it a little bit more difficult for people because he's such a unique player. I assume Trent Williams is going to be back. I don't know. I mean, that helps him. But again, I think the Eagles are very similar in the way they play to San Francisco because it's more about the power running game.
Right.
They have a little more versatility in the passing game. Because of Kyle Shanahan, his schemes, they use motion and that kind of stuff. And they have better playmakers. They have Debo and Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle, who's the best tight end in football. But I think the Eagles have a better quarterback. So it's kind of tough to tell. But Dallas is a better team than both of them. They should win. They should win.
Last to this, and then we really need to just give some thoughts about what happened Saturday night down at the Link. Do you think the Eagles would be an 8.5-point underdog against Dallas in Dallas this week?
Oh, that's tough because I think you get some dispensation as the Super Bowl champions. I think that number's a little too large. And I think the Cowboys get some dispensation because they're America's team. So the lines are probably a little bit inflated, but no, probably not. Super Bowl champions has a little more cachet, and so does Tom Brady. Probably not.
Yeah, I think.
But it'd be really close. Really close.
At the end of the day, Vegas is going to set the line at the spot that they think they can best get even action on both sides and don't care about who is the America's team and who is the Super Bowl
but they
champion.
do care because they know how people default. They know their audience. They know their audience better than anybody else. And they go, oh, Tom Brady, Super Bowl champions. People are going to bet on him. And that's how, not everybody is studious, shall we say. So they take advantage of that.
Understood, but I actually think the Cowboys might be bigger a name recognition and play than the champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Now, they're certainly bigger name recognition, no question about that.
Patriots might be a little different if Tom was still playing for New England, but even though they are Super Bowl champions, the Bucs just don't match up with the Cowboys, and I'm pretty much guaranteeing you the Eagles wouldn't be an 8.5-point choice underdog as they are against Tampa.
It would be close. Right, what do you think the number would be? I mean,
Six.
I think it would be awful close. I will say that.
Well, I think it'd be about 6, which is actually a huge difference because it goes past the 7 number. But don't want to get into an over gambling conversation. Eagles got their butts kicked against the Cowboys on Saturday. It means next to nothing because it was basically the elevated practice squad that the Eagles were trotting out there. You text me and told me that they took all of one guy off the COVID list. We talked about it all week leading up to it, where the Eagles gaming the system to give themselves roster flexibility for Saturday's game. Oh, that's exactly the way it played out. They activated Jason Kelce for one play. So they had 12 guys on the COVID list. They activated one, and he played one play. That's basically resigning before the game ever starts. All the practice squad players. Then they deactivate, including their starting quarterback, basically every other starter that was left on the team. So I know you've got your opinion about the Cowboys. You think it's a bad matchup for the Eagles, and you think they're primed and prepped to go to the playoffs. Did you learn anything on Saturday in the mismatch that took place at Lincoln Financial Field?
No, nothing. I mean, again, when the law firm of McPherson, Vincent, and Scott is trying to deal with Amari Cooper, C.D. Lamb, and Cedric Wilson, in a lot of ways, it was amazing. I think they hung in the game. They tied it. Let's see. They tied it with 12:24 left in the second quarter. They were in the game. They tied it at 17-17 with 3:40 left in the second quarter. So they were in the game for the first half. And the issue was the bad punt. And that was really, the Cowboys went right down the field. Then they had the bad Aaron Seaman. By the way, you got to be concerned about Aaron. I don't know if it's the 29-year-old rookie wall, but he has not been good recently. And he had 2 really bad punts in that particular game. So maybe worry about individual things like that. But they actually hung in the game for longer than I would have expected. And they especially played well offensively. And again, man, they ran for 149 yards or something like that. I mean, they lead the league with 161 and yeah, they have Audrey Dillard, Sue Opeta are capable players. We've seen that. But, you're down to Brett Toths and LaRaven Clarks and Jack Andersons, who people wouldn't even know if not for his sleeve tattoos. I mean, Jeff Stoutland is just amazing. We talk about it all the time on this show. I just watched. If you watched last night's game, which obviously was tremendous season finale, drama, everything you want. Pittsburgh on the edge of their seat. They're going to tie this stinking game. The Steelers are going to be out of the playoffs, and Daniel Carson makes the kick in overtime. If you watch that game and you watch poor Storm Norton trying to block Max Crosby, again, this is a borderline playoff team, the Chargers. That is a good football team. Not a great team, but a good team. They can't block anybody. Imagine how good Justin Herbert would be if they could block. This is prevalent all throughout the league. I tell everyone on the show, watch other games, watch other teams. It is amazing how poor the offensive line play is in this league. Now, Tampa, unfortunately, is not in that category. The Eagles are not in that category. There's about 5 really good offensive lines, and you're lucky enough in Philadelphia to be watching one of them. But more impressive than how good the offensive line is, the typical offensive line, is how he gets these guys ready to play. LaRaven Clark looked more capable than Storm Norton. He's their 4th right tackle. I mean, but by the way, Dallas played DeMarcus Lawrence and Randy Gregory a large portion of that game. That he wasn't blocking nobodies. Those are good players. Maybe not Max Crosby level this year. Max has had a great year, but I mean, it is one of the most amazing things to me. And I always talk about, I've been talking about it recently because I got killed for, God forbid, saying Howie Roseman isn't terrible at his job. I'm enemy, number one now. So I've been killing for that. And I say Eagles fans are spoiled because they don't know how the other half lives. That's similar with the offensive line. I mean, they are spoiled with the offensive line. Absolutely spoiled.
Agree on that. And Stoutland is a borderline miracle worker. But to re-reference your buddy, Howie, top 5 general manager Rosen, how did all those secondary guys that he's been picking up here, there, through trade, off the waiver wire, how'd they look on Saturday against the Dallas Cowboys passing game?
Yeah, not good. Not good. But again, you talk about, I mean, most starting corners don't look good against the Cowboys receivers. That's part of the problem when you're playing the Dallas Cowboys. They're really good. That's the best wide receiver group in the NFL. And by far when Gallup is healthy. Because again, so I don't think people realize how good Cedric Wilson is. Every time the guy's got to play, he puts up on, I mean, he makes plays all over the place, and he just killed the Eagles. And again, he's their 4th option at the wide receiver position. So, I mean, I don't know how many starting groups match up against Cooper, Lamb, Gallup / Wilson. And that's one of the issues when you're playing. But certainly Zach McPherson, Kerry Vincent Jr. and Josiah Scott are not amongst the group that can match up with that receiving core. Luckily, they don't have to play. I've been saying all year, Jody, if they had an injury, one of the luckiest breaks the Eagles got is that their corner stayed healthy for the vast majority. You had the concussion for Darius Slay that cost them about a quarter and a half in one game. Other than that, these guys have been relatively healthy. I think Avante had a concussion issue once. If they were forced to play Zach McPherson or Kerry Vincent or Mac McCain or
Tay Gowan,
yeah, thanks for Josiah Scott, it would not be pretty.
Would not. And oh, by the way, again, we're trying to stay focused on what's directly in front of us, which is a playoff matchup against Tampa. But we always do have at least a quarter of an eye ahead toward the future. You better consider giving Steven Nelson a contract extension. No, they got him. I give Howie Roseman a lot of credit for being patient, playing the waiting game, getting him at his price more so than Steven Nelson's price. Steven Nelson's been damn good. And if you look at what else is behind him on this roster as of right now, yeah, I'd go to lengths to try and make sure I re-secure Steven Nelson going forward. I want him back.
Well, remember, and this is playoff week, but remember the Eagles also, now it's locked in. They got 15 and 16 back-to-back in the first round of the draft, and then they'll have their own pick, which can range anywhere from 19 to 32, depending on how the playoffs.
I'm going to take under 32.
I'm going to take under 32 as well. But you get my point. It's not locked in yet. 15 and 16, go get a corner.
Well, I'll go get a corner, but I'm still trying to bring Steven Nelson back. There's a lot of things they could do with those 3 picks upcoming. A corner being one of them, I'm perfectly cool with that. Absolutely have to stick them in and expect them to start next year. No, I'd rather have the luxury of letting it be a competition. And yeah, I got bad news. The guys who were asked to step in, granted, Prescott, the Dallas wide receivers, that's a tough task. And they were thrown into the deep end of the pool here, but they sank like a rock. So I would rather have better options at the cornerback position going into next season. I.e. John McMullen on Jody McDonald. A couple other notes from Saturday. Then we completely turn the page toward the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and playoff football. An accomplishment to itself. This was not supposed to be a playoff team this year. New coach, wet behind the ears quarterback, entire new coaching staff, an owner who called the season. Now I'm forgetting the word. Transitional year. Thank you, Johnny McMullen. Transitional year long before it ever started. They transitioned, all right. Transitioned back into being a playoff team after 4-11-1 last year. We'll continue talking all aspects of the Eagles here on Birds 365.